Surprise!
We're taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us for an incredible higher education marketing and enrollment management conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
amazing.
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Boy, am I excited today. Oh, you're going to know why I'm excited today when we get going here. And you're going to go, well, it makes sense that Joe is excited when I tell you why I'm excited. It's kind of a tautology, right? I'm just talking in a circle. But somebody that's going to help me get out of the circle right now is someone that I have interviewed twice on this podcast. And now she's coming back as a first-time guest co-host. You know her name, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Marnie Baker-Stein. She is the Chief Content Officer at Coursera. I'm even a little nervous for our guest. See, I'm already messing up. How are you, Marnie?
I'm great. Thanks for having me this morning.
I'm very excited for you to be here. How are you doing? And how's things going at Coursera?
Oh, I am so jazzed up with all the amazing work that's going on with Coursera. It's so aligned with my values and my mission, and I can't wait to talk to you more about it. But a lot has happened in my first 6 months at Coursera, and I couldn't be more thrilled with the direction that we're moving with short form credentials, with pathways to degrees, and not just to support the learners who need it in this country, and there are so many who do, but learners all over the world.
Absolutely. And when you thought about co-hosting with me, Marnie, I didn't know if you thought it would be such a pressure type situation here, right? It's like we have a great guest, but now we got to perform because she's awesome, and it's like there's so much pressure.
I know. I was up early this morning getting ready. Lots of pressure here.
Me too. In fact, I didn't sleep last night, which is I'm already messing up. All right. So our guest needs to know that as we mess up, it's just because we're so excited. But let's bring her in right now because I have a feeling she has a few things to say about higher education. I'm not going to be able to get this all into my short applause, but I'm going to try. Ladies and gentlemen, Congresswoman Dr. Virginia Ann Foxx. She represents North Carolina's 5th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. She is the chairwoman of the House Committee on Education and Workforce. Dr. Foxx, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joe. I'm delighted to be with you and Marnie.
We're excited to have you here. And if I didn't say that already, I'm kind of fanboying a little bit because of you do such great. You're such a great advocate for higher education and education in general in the United States, in the House, and so on. Why don't you just start by giving us a couple minutes on what you think the state of higher education is at this point in time in our country?
Well, for one thing, I'd avoid using the term higher education because I believe that we are not teaching higher order skills at the level that we have done that in years past. I think we really have to look at what's happening in post-secondary education, which is the term I use and try to get other people to use, because there's a lot going on in post-secondary education. Some are higher order skills and some are not. And so I try to be very clear about that. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself, because your background, your experiences color how you look at things in terms of policy. Joe, I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina in houses, rental houses, with no electricity and no running water. My family bought our first house when I was 14 years old, paid $1,100 for it. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And we had running water and electricity. My parents, my mother had a 6th grade education, my father a 9th grade education. Both dropped out of school. very early in life. My father was in the military, and he went to school on the GI Bill after military, became a cosmetologist, and that's another whole story. But they always wanted me to do well in school, even though they didn't have much formal education. Both were very bright people. And my father actually read a lot. So I learned my love of reading from my father. But I didn't know that I could go on to post-secondary education until my senior year in high school. I was the high school janitor. I swept out the school every day for the maintenance man. And I had a student teacher my senior year, my last semester, who said to me, you need to go to college and you need to marry a man with a college degree. Well, I was in a county where probably 5% of people went on to college. It was almost nobody went on to college. But at the last minute, I decided I would take his advice. I got into a small liberal arts junior college 12 miles from where I lived, and commuted with guys that I went to school with. But I didn't have money. I dropped out, worked, went back to school at Appalachian, met my husband who was at Carolina, got married, transferred to Carolina. Finally, after 7 years, got my degree, not in English education because I couldn't do student teaching, but in English. Worked for a couple of years, got a chance to get a fellowship and an assistantship, went back to Carolina, got a master's in college teaching, got a job at Appalachian State University, running a federal program and teaching in the sociology department. Then I got my doctorate by going to school at night, 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week, driving 120 miles each time, and took me 7 years again to get my doctorate. So I want to say, I tell that story because I want people to know I am a lover of education, a lover of education. And I want people to be educated. I want people to have the opportunity to be educated to the highest level possible for them. I got my doctorate in education because I wanted to teach, but then I became a community college president after that. But then I left and went into the political world. But I am still the biggest advocate in the world of people in this country having the opportunity to develop their skills, whatever that area of skill is, whether it is in electrician, being a carpenter, being a massage therapist, being a cosmetologist, being an artist, being a pianist, whatever, or a doctor or a lawyer. My goal is to help people get the skills they need, whether it involves a degree or a certificate or diploma. I am a big believer in certification. I think people need to be able to prove what they can do in our culture, which is a certifying culture. And Marnie, I know, can talk more about that from the Coursera point of view, because Coursera does so much of that. And so many people are doing that online. So sorry for the long background, but I do think it's important that people understand where you're coming from, because it forms your philosophy.
I love everything that you said, especially as you made this distinction between skills and degree. And you did that purposefully because, you know, we're in this era. It's a funny era that we're in, you know, post-COVID, and the public trust of higher education is waning.
34%, 36% of the people in this country have a positive or view or trust of higher ed.
Yeah, so we have this this podcast we use to talk to leaders and say we've got a kind of a packaging problem. There's a relevancy issue which we can solve, I think, but how do we communicate value? And so along with that conversation comes the I'm going to call it the lack of understanding around how you package your skills. You can go off and get skills, and you can take micro credentials, and you can do this and you can do that. But the greater employment sector says, well, I still understand degrees because they step up and they step down. You know, there's steps, and I get that as a hiring manager. I don't know if I get all of these stackable credentials. How do we get the workforce to get on board with looking at skills in an understandable way? And I know Marnie's going to have something to add to this too.
Well, I think people are getting it, frankly. I think people are getting it and they're understanding it. You know, I met last week with a major employer in this country. I mean, a huge employer, over 200,000 people across the country. And they are focused very much on skill development. They're working with the community college. They're working with the public schools. They want to expand how they're doing that. And more employers are understanding that. But frankly, students are understanding it and parents are understanding it. COVID exposed for us, the only good thing that came out of COVID was it exposed how lacking our current systems of what we call public education are.
Nailed
Now,
it.
don't get me wrong. We have some fabulous universities. I'm a product of two of those. I got a good education, but that good education started in high school and elementary school, where I learned to read, I learned to write, you know, but I think people are getting it, and I'm very pleased. Enrollment in universities is down. That to me is a healthy thing because people are looking for alternatives, and people who are graduating now from college, many of them don't have skills. I pointed this out the other day. You can hire a college graduate right now and you have no idea what that person can do. No idea. And
it
that's
used to be
a
that the
shame.
college degree allowed you to assess risk, maybe reduce your risk of hire, but that isn't a thing anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Marnie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I call what you call packaging, Joe, I call that currency,
Yeah.
right? We need a currency for skills-based, mastery-based education that everyone understands, students, their parents, and employers. And that is the work at Coursera. You know, we have over the last several years started to work on what we call gateway certificates, which are designed against actual roles that are in high demand in the workforce. So where we have established workforce gaps, employment gaps, and where we have great partners like Google and IBM and Meta, and many of our university partners as well, who are joining with us to take those roles to backward design certificates that actually develop the skills and mastery levels for those roles. And to get those out to learners everywhere. We have millions of learners in these certificates worldwide, and we recently did research on micro credentials that we're offering and that are being offered more broadly globally. And we saw that 90% of students that we interviewed or that we surveyed across age ranges, across geographies, were valuing these skills-based, mastery-based, gateway certificates against what they could do for them in the workplace, and 88% of the employers agreed. So we are seeing this shift. I agree, in demand for more agile, more skills-based education. The question becomes, and I think this is a great question for all of us, is how do we establish a currency for those achievements that everybody understands and values?
I don't know the answer. Dr. Foxx, do you have the answer to that one?
Well, again, I think what you're seeing is a change and all of a sudden I can't remember the name of the bill that I got passed, and I wish I could see it right now. We passed it out of the oversight committee. I need to find it in a minute. But where we say we want to downplay the descriptions of jobs requiring a degree. Many states are beginning to do that. So they're now looking at people's life experiences and the skills they have. But we passed a bill for the federal government to do this. The state of Maryland got a lot of publicity over it's doing it. And I think now there are about 10 states that are saying, we are not going to put in a job description or a job announcement that you have to have a bachelor's degree for this job, when the bachelor's degree really is irrelevant to the job. And they're going to evaluate people based on their skills. So we are seeing this movement in the government, at least, and I think you're going to see it more with employers. Now, one of the things we're doing is we want to have a bill called Workforce Pell. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the title of it, but what we would do would be on those courses Marnie's talking about, short-term courses that kept people into a job. We would allow people to use a Pell Grant, because in many cases, they might need to go full time for 15 weeks, for example, and they wouldn't have any income. So the Pell Grant would help them with that. And the idea is they get the basic skills, get a job, and then continue to learn both on the job, but as well as in structured programs. And we're better to do structured programs than in the business. When I was the president of the community college, I went out and visited lots of industry in our area. We had a lot of industry in those days. We don't have it anymore. And I said to them, what can I do for you? And they said, we need a supervisory class. We have a lot of people as supervisors who've had no education in this area. And so I came back to them later with the design for a 10-week program, and they loved it. And they said, well, we want one more subject, time management. I said, okay, I can do that. I didn't know how to do that, what they asked me to do, but I took faculty and staff of the college. We sat down and we figured out how we would teach this 10-week course, and we went to the factories. I did it one time, and then the next morning I got a call from there were four furniture factories. And the second furniture factory said, we heard what you did on Tuesday. We want you to come to our place on Monday. And so in a year's time, I was teaching in 5 different businesses, and we taught every afternoon of 4 afternoons a week. And it was great, but that's the way you do it. You go to the employers, if at all possible. What we're seeing is early college programs where they're beginning to teach college type skills or the skills we know people need to get their first job. And we're doing it in the high schools. Again, I did that when I was at the community college 30 years ago. We need to be doing more of that, going to the student/worker.
Yeah. And can I just add something to that? Because I think that's exactly right. And the more of these hybrid solutions where community colleges or state college systems or workforce systems are collaborating on this front to bring skills-based education to learners through their channels, it's really powerful, and we're seeing this explode. We are working with several community colleges, including Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, to build skills-based certificates into their pathways. UT System is working with us to build skills-based pathways from our gateway certificates into their degree pathways. Louisiana State Workforce Commission is working with us to build skills-based certificates into their workforce pathways, but that then lead into degree pathways. So we're seeing some really interesting collaborations and hybrid designs where we're bringing workforce and degree focused pathways for learners. And we're bringing those to a point where we can actually integrate some of these skills-based training programs, integrate some of these certifications, and provide learners the best of both worlds, where they can both learn and earn in programs that are designed for them, and that give them not only those degree credentials, which are really important in some cases for certain professions, but that also give them the skills they need to compete in the workplace. And I think That is really exciting to me. And it has its origins in the work that you were doing 30 years ago.
And Marnie, I love collaboration is a common word we use, but hybrid system, I like that because I think that helps describe too what we're doing. And I haven't heard that word before. So I like that hybrid system. I'm
going to try to give you a word that you like too, Dr. Foxx. That's my goal for the rest of the episode, for you to get me the same compliment. Okay. I'm gonna try now. I'm gonna try right now. So I was reading an article you had in an Inside Higher Ed or somewhere quoted you saying that students vote with their feet. That students can vote with their feet these days. I like to up that and say that students vote with a click now, all right? Because they can go anywhere at any time, in any way. I'm really interested in the history here on what happened to higher education in your estimation. Did we get lazy? Did institutions get lazy where we just thought, you know what, we're going to stand up this program and students are going to line up at the door and we're just going to, you know, it's going to be assembly line of students. We're going to fill all of our classes. We'll be fat and happy and we'll you know, sail into the midnight. Did we lose focus as a market on students? Did things change around us and we didn't change? What's your estimation of how we got to this place at a lack of public trust? Is it costs? What is it?
Oh, I do think post-secondary education, particularly the baccalaureate and master's and doctoral programs, got very, very lazy. And a big part of that is because money just kept flowing. And money would come in particularly for financial aid and through state, local, and federal funds, all taxpayer money, or through tuition. And yes, I think the schools got very, very lazy over the years, thinking this will never end. Now, we're seeing a couple of things again happening. Another thing that's happening is the demographic cliff that we're seeing. So there are fewer and fewer people graduating from high school because of birth rates. The birth rates have gone down, and I think it's this year hit a cliff where there's a significant drop in students graduating from high school. Not because they're not graduating, but because their students aren't there. And that has been a big drop off. But again, I think COVID raised people's awareness, the cost of education. The post-secondary education thought they could just keep raising costs, and that the money would always be there. And people again are waking up, and they're saying to themselves, why should I pay $80,000 a year and not have much to show for it? There was an article, I think yesterday, about West Virginia University being millions of dollars in debt.
75 million, something like that.
Yeah. And they said, if we build it, they will come. It's just exactly what you were saying, Joe. They were offering programs and thinking people were going to come, and they're building climbing walls and fancy dorms, and they weren't coming because they weren't evaluating what they were doing. They weren't, being accountable. Again, a little story about me. When I was at the community college, the business and industry asked me for a new program. Well, I didn't have the money for a new program. So I looked around and evaluated all of my programs. By the way, I got a grant to set up a program evaluation that was adopted by the University of Michigan because we looked at the curriculum, we looked at the graduates. I was way ahead of my time doing this. And we had an auto mechanics program that hadn't had a graduate its entire 17 years it had been in existence. No graduates. People were coming in, bringing their cars and fixing them and taking them home. And so we abolished that program and we put in industrial maintenance program that the business and industry wanted it. But we did it very objectively. And I think every school has to do that. They shouldn't wait for the accreditation reviews either. They should do it constantly. And that's what we want. We want transparency from the colleges and universities. We want them to tell the parents and students, Here's how many students are graduating from this program, how many are getting jobs in with the degree or that require the degree. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's how long it's going to take you. And when the colleges and universities start doing that, they're going to start seeing where they have weak programs that need to be done away with. And that there needs to be a self-evaluation. And we think more and more the accrediting bodies should be pushing that on the colleges and universities and showing what value is coming out of the program. But they shouldn't need to be pushed to do this. Every president should be doing that every single day.
Attention.
Are you ready to elevate your institution's marketing and enrollment strategies? Join the EdUp Experience podcast at the Insights EDU conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't miss out on this opportunity to hear from engaging speakers from industry-leading companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and higher ed leaders. Learn the latest marketing and enrollment strategies to grow your programs. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration.
Attention. Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon. You know, one of the fascinating things that's coming out of the demographic cliff, and you guys will both appreciate this, private universities and public universities that offer four-year degrees are that didn't used to be interested in a community college student now want that student instead of that student going to a community college. And the community college is saying, I don't want to just transfer my student out after 2 years. I'm going to start looking at bachelor degrees. And the student is going, I'm not even sure if I'm going to college. Right? I mean, so everybody's interested in getting this student because there just aren't as many. So we have these supply and demand issues. And it's for the student who's losing interest. That doesn't bode well for post-secondary ed in general, but it does for skill stacking and micro-credentials and alternative pathways, right? College isn't for anyone, but post-secondary ed could be for everyone. It's just a question of when and how they get there.
And Marnie probably has something to say, but I want to make a real quick comment. I'm not opposed to people getting degrees. You know, I've been accused of being opposed. No, I'm not. I think people should work toward degrees when it makes sense to
Absolutely
them to
right.
do so. I want to see lifelong learners. And the better we make education, the more likely we are to have lifelong learners. Unfortunately, people get turned off from education. I was a natural learner. There's a small percentage of people like me in the sense of academic learning, but people are natural learners. If you show them things they're interested in, they'll get fascinated by it and they'll want to know more. The idea is to get to children early in life and get them to want to learn because it's something they're interested in.
Marnie, you know this. Just because we talk about skills pathways, it doesn't mean it's instead of a degree. But at that point in time, for that learner in that moment, a degree may not be right. And I'd rather offer a skill stack or some credential than have that person go into, retail and work for the rest of their lives without any post-secondary ed. It's about just-in-time learning, and that's what Coursera is all about. I know that.
Absolutely. And I think that, first of all, with this demographic cliff, it's not just a demographic cliff in terms of the age, the change in age. The entire demographic profile of our learner population in the United States, the learners who need us now more than ever with Gen AI and how fast the future of work is changing, is a set of learners who are not actually set up for success in a 4-year full-time coming of age learning experience. They just aren't. And so part of our problem in post-secondary education has been that we've lost our focus on the learner. I don't know if we've been lazy as much as we've been focused on the development of our institutions, of our campuses, of our brands. You know, that's natural. I think that's natural. For what happened is totally explainable in terms of where university leaders were focused. And when they focused on campuses and lazy rivers and parking lots and growing that base of on-campus learners, they didn't see that, hey, our whole demographic has changed. This isn't what they need. And in fact, they can't be successful in this environment. And also, the programs that we're offering on those campuses aren't what they need to get jobs in the zip codes where they live or where they want to live, right? So they totally took the eye off the learner ball, right? And so when we put the eye back on the learner, it makes us question everything. I think that's what COVID did for all of us, is we need to get these learners a system of education that they can access across a lifetime of learning that they're going to need to do, because everything is changing all the time. And we need an educational system that's going to get them the skills that they need. And these aren't just technical skills. These are all the skills and competencies to survive and thrive in this world that awaits us. It's all around us now, but it's getting more complicated all the time. And that system has got to look different than the system that we have today. And yes, I do think Coursera, Western Governors University, surely, and Coursera, now that I'm diving into this new role, what I see is the opportunity for a new set of educational pathways that not only respect that our learners are looking for value in the places where they live, to help their families, to build their communities, but that they need that value in a different package, as you say, Joe. They need it in an agile certificate of skills that's going to help them get that first job. And they also need to know that that package is going to lead them to greater and greater degrees of value throughout their lifetime. It's not just going to be a dead end with the certificate, but that certificate builds into the next one and the next one, and ultimately maybe into an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree. Like, that's what our educational system needs to do into the future. That's certainly what Coursera is about and why I'm at Coursera. But the traditional educational infrastructure has been slow to respond, and we need to figure out how we can get them to wake up and be a part of the solving that needs to take place for our educational system to work.
Marnie, I just cut off of a different podcast where the focus was on students, not systems. And so you very much encapsulated that in what you were saying. The other thing I would say, and I often say this when I give talks, is this is the most exciting time in the world to be in education because of all the opportunities that are out there. You can go to a small liberal arts school, live on campus. That's an idyllic life. You can go to a large school. You can do everything online. The choices are just unbelievable. You know, when I was growing up, and that's some time ago, my choices were extraordinarily limited in not only where I could go to school, because I was place bound. Nobody even thought of computers in those days, place bound, but what my opportunities were for jobs. You know, I was told I could be a secretary, you know, or a teacher. Being a lawyer was totally out of realm for me, although I had an aptitude for that. But nowadays, you don't have to, again, schools used to not allow you to come to law school until if you were a certain age, you know. Now, who cares again about that? And also, we're living longer. You know, most people in their 40s, 30s and 40s and 20s are going to live to be 120 years old in our culture. And so people have to think about the fact that they're going to change careers. I mean, goodness, 30 years ago, we said people are going to change careers 7 times. Imagine what that's like now. It's going to be incredible how many times people are going to change their jobs and their focus.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
It's something we have to be ready for. But one thing I would like you both to be ready for is I'm going to ask you both a question. It's one of the most important questions in the entirety of higher education before we finish out this episode. And it's something that I've been working on trying to solve for a really long time. And that is, how do you pronounce this word? Pedagogy or pedagogy? And I really need to know because nobody knows the true answer. So I'm going to go to you first, Marnie. Is it pedagogy or pedagogy? And I really need the answer.
I don't want to go. I think, you should be free to say it however you want to say it.
Oh, that's such a political answer.
I say pedagogy myself.
Pedagogy with a GA.
Yes.
Pedagogy.
Yeah, pedagogy.
Dr. Foxx, where do you weigh on in this critical question here?
I say pedagogy.
Pedagogy. Wow. So it's pedagogy, pedagogical, pedagogy, pedagogical, and it could be pedagogy and pedagogical. I still remain confused. I still think it's a made-up word that doesn't mean anything, but there's a lot of made-up words, I guess. So, Dr. Foxx.
Well, if you say pedagogy, see, it gives you feeling of movement, right?
Ooh, see, now there's a definition.
Oh, I like that. I
the
like
feeling of movement, and learning is movement, right? Learning is action.
So earlier in the episode, you said, Dr. Foxx, you really liked something that Marnie said. We've really liked something that you said, but still no one has liked anything that I have said. I still got a few minutes left in the episode here to prove that I have something important to say. But I do want to just let you know that we appreciate the work that you're doing, Dr. Foxx. I think one of the things that really irks me is when people say non-traditional student.
Oh,
and it's working learners. That's what it is, right? These are people that work. They're working learners. Some of this is a mentality. It's a mind shift change, as Marnie was saying, where everything was built for a traditional student. Then we have working learners. You were a working learner, all right, as you went on. I had 2 kids holding on to my legs when I was getting my doctorate degree. It was the hardest thing in the world to do. Yeah, Marnie too. Working learners need something different than a traditional student. And so I guess my question for you is with Congress, are we ready to are these conversations resonating across people that we have to do things differently, that we have different types of students, that we have different types of institutions? Because it's very easy to say the students or higher education. Who are we talking about and what are we talking about? And if we don't define that, it's very hard to have conversations about improvement.
Well, you're asking several questions there. Number one, I was frustrated also by that term non-traditional. And so we checked it out, Joe. Only 24% of the people who are currently enrolled in post-secondary education, and Marnie had a better definition for it than I did, are people coming out of a high school, going straight into a college on a full-time basis. So only 24% are traditional, only 24%. So 1/4 of the students. And so we talk about non-traditional as they are the other. They are the term we came up with is contemporary student.
Mm.
Now, I don't know that that's great, but I like worker learner. That I think is a good term. So maybe we'll give you that as the term for the day.
I checked the box.
Worker learner, because that is exactly what we have in about 75% of the cases. People who are working, almost all working at least part-time and going to school, some working full-time and going to school. When you ask about Congress, unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people on the other side of the aisle have grasped this issue yet. We do have people who want to support Workforce Pell. They are being told by employers in their district, we don't have skilled workers. You as a government have to do something to help us. Well, what's going to happen is in the federal government, the money we provide is for such a small group of people It doesn't cover we have 10 million jobs unfilled in this country right now. There's no way that the federal government is going to solve that problem. It's got to come from the employers. And that's what I talk to the employers about all the time. Develop your own skilled programs, develop your certification. And for a company that I talked to again last week, they have 200,000 employees all across the country. Well, there's no reason in the world why that company cannot develop its own system of certification. Now, as long as people are within the company, they can stack their credentials and probably move up. Now, if they move outside the company, they still can say, this is the certification I gained from my company, or these are the certifications. And that will resonate with any other employer. Now, with what Marnie was talking about, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, the IT people were getting all together and saying, we're going to teach basic skills because these people may not stay with Meta, or they may not stay with Google, or they may not stay with IBM. But guess what? They're going to move around. And if we can work on similar kinds of certifications and we can describe what's in those, then it's okay. So I think the business and industry is going to have to take control of this, working with groups like Coursera and others who will be able to put a stamp of approval on it. That's the key to it. What's the stamp of approval? So you don't have to work for years for a company to prove what you can do.
Listeners will go back to this episode and realize that I asked you 3 questions in my one question. You answered all 3.
Amazing.
Well done. Marnie, I want to give it back over to you to ask a question, any final questions you have or comments, and then I'll give Dr. Foxx here a final 2 to close out the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the light through my work at WGU, through my work at Coursera. I do believe competency-based, skills-based education is the future. It provides a currency for learners. It provides a currency for employers. I love the work that especially Google has done amazing work on this front with Grow with Google, led by Lisa Gavelber, in terms of bringing these certificates to bear that are really high quality, amazing experiences. I love it. I guess my question to you is, and maybe this is just an add-on to Joe's question, is as we're moving forward with the short-term Pell work, how do you see the ecosystem changing as we get learners money, as we get learner support to do shorter form credentials and certificates? What do you think that's going to do to the ecosystem? What do you think?
What's the future look like?
Going to look like in years?
It's going to be very hard to get the current system to change. There is a program called eligible training provider. There's a list called the eligible training provider list. And it is the bane of my existence because it's so difficult to get into that list and to expand who can be a part of that and be able to provide the certificates and the currency, as you call it. I like that term too, for the person. And so it's going to be very hard as long as the Department of Labor controls a lot of what's going on. Again, we have to break out of that, I think, and not let the federal government be controlling so much of what's happening. The other thing I would say to you is the language is important. You only use the T word one time. I was very proud to hear that. And I don't even know if you know that, either you or Joe. But the only thing that I remember from my 7 years of my doctoral program is one night a student came in and she said she had been somewhere being teed. And I don't even like to use the word, but if you don't know what it means, trained. Okay, so the professor pulled himself up to his full 5 feet 2 inches tall and said to her, "Don't you ever let me hear you use that word in conjunction with human beings. You train dogs and you educate people." And so I think, again, changing the language is going to be very important in what we do. So we have made a distinction in the past, and Joe alluded to this a little bit before, a distinction in the past as to whether you went to a baccalaureate degree program. It was always education there. If you went to what a community college or a two-year college, there was more of the focus on skill building and that T word. And so I'm on a mission to get rid of the T word everywhere so that it's all considered education. It's skill development education. And I think we changed the language. Once we change the language, we have business and industry take back education to themselves. They, for years, gave it over to who they thought were the experts, and the experts have failed them. And by the way, let me give you one more thing to think about, Joe. You can use this again. The Ark was built by amateurs and the Titanic by experts. Okay? So you want to sum up the problems in education. You say, education has been designed and delivered by experts. Okay? And I think in too many cases, people have undervalued what has been happening at work in terms of education. And if we could find a way to structure those programs better and to give them a currency or a certificate, we'd be so much better off.
I'd just like to note that I think it was Marnie that used the T word, not me. I just want to say that for the record. No, I don't know.
She did.
I'm so sorry.
And now I've used up all my time in answering Marnie's question. So you don't have to give me any closing remarks. I've done everything I needed to do.
I just want you to take a moment just to close us out. Is there anything you'd like us to know about your work? Anything you want to say? Open microphone.
Well, I'd just like to say that if there are people watching this, I'd encourage them to call their members of Congress, their representatives and their senators, because we're all members of Congress, their representatives and their senators. And if they like what they've heard, if they like the idea of Workforce Pell, if they like the idea of our changing the way education is delivered, if they like the idea of accountability for their hard-earned taxpayer dollars, talk to their representatives and senators and say, hey, this woman over there at the Education and Workforce Committee might be onto something, and the members of the committee. And we do things in a bipartisan way occasionally. It's not often, but we have some fundamental differences. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle always want to spend more money. I don't think it's a money issue. I think it's a transparency and accountability issue. We want more accountability. We want more transparency. But we can come together as a country and make things better for the workforce and help people. And again, we're talking about incumbent workers too. We haven't said too much about that, but the incumbent workers are where it is right now. So I'm honored to have the job I have. It's a wonderful position for me. Again, coming from where I came from, I want to preserve this opportunity for other people. Being in Congress is not the sine qua non of success, but it's one avenue. But I want everybody to have the same kind of success in his or her chosen profession. And I love this country and want to see it succeed.
I love that. Well, last question, Dr. Foxx. How did Marnie Baker Stein do on a scale of 1 to 10 co-hosting this episode, with 10 being the highest?
Oh, she's a 10. Absolutely. Bring her back.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest co-host today, Dr. Marnie Baker Stein. She is the Chief Content Officer at Coursera. Marnie, what did you think of this co-hosting gig with Dr. Foxx?
I loved this, and I could not be happier to have been here for this conversation. And everything we talked about is so near and dear to my heart and my work and my mission. And I was, thank you for inviting me.
Final question: on a scale of 1 to 11, how did I do as your host? Just because I want as the host, because I want to beat Marnie. Was I a 9 or an 11?
No. Come on. You did an equally good job.
All right, all right.
I'll take the
She
path
beats
more
me in
into it.
everything. I mean, she's like running giant company. I mean, it's not even a contest. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today, your guest today, the amazing Congresswoman Dr. Virginia Ann Foxx. She's chairwoman of the House Committee on Education and Workforce and representing North Carolina's 5th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I couldn't be more honored to have you here, Dr. Foxx. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate your inviting me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Oh, yeah.
Attention higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. We are taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us at Insights EDU on February 20th to 22nd, 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. Gain insight into the latest higher education trends and cutting-edge marketing strategies that'll take your institution's enrollment to a whole new level. This is your opportunity to connect with higher education leaders and marketing experts from across the country. Comprehensive presentations, engaging panel discussions, and more. Insights EDU will equip you to position your institution for growth. Register now at insightsedu.com and use the code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Can you afford to miss this conference?
I don't think so. Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touch point for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.